Hey everybody, we are doing another talking video. In this video, we'll be talking about the economy and every Taiwanese person's favorite subject, money. And if you prefer some adventure video, there are plenty around. Go check somewhere, they should pop up. But this video is all going to be talking. And before we get started, just a quick reminder, go get your Xiaofei merch. It is in a link at the bottom. It is the best, most comfortable clothing for anything outdoors and even just sitting and chilling on your balcony. Now, moving on. A few months ago, I produced a video talking about recreational sports in Taiwan. Just the complete lack of them has resulted in a big hole in the economy, and that by promoting sports and outdoor recreation, we could really improve the economy of Taiwan while at the same time improving people's lives by giving them something to do, creating jobs, building life skills, building confidence in kids, and all these other things. There really are a lot of benefits, including health benefits, to going outdoors and exercising. In that video, there were thousands of comments and a lot of you disagreed with me, and that is great. I love discussion. So if ever you think what I'm talking about is wrong, you can let me know in the comments and we can talk about it together. Now, most of that disagreement was based on the idea that international tourism is not that beneficial to economy. And that's fine. I actually don't dispute that much. If you notice though, I'm not calling it tourism, I'm calling it recreation. This is outdoor recreation and most of it is domestic spending. And we compare it to other countries, let's just pick the United States as an example. Domestic spending on outdoor recreation represents about 5% of the economy. That is huge. In Taiwan, it's barely any. So if you want a 4% boost of the economy, which was traditionally done through childbirth, isn't happening now, one of the best things you can do is open up recreational markets. Now, tourism, and specifically domestic tourism, is a big part of recreation, but I don't exclusively call it tourism because a lot of recreation isn't. An example of that is for somebody living in Taipei, if you send your kids to a weekly sailing class in the Danshui River, that's recreation, but it's not tourism. And the same goes if you go over to Gongliao and you hire a rock climbing coach to show you how to rock climb, or even if you just go there yourself and you don't hire anybody, but you eat at the local restaurants, or if you rent a kayak and go on the Danshui or one of those paddle boats, or you take your bike out, you bought a bicycle, you don't even rent one, but you own a bicycle and you take it around. If that bicycle, you're using for recreation instead of commuting, which I'll get into another video about commuting on bicycle later. If that spending is done towards your fun, your fitness, and outdoor activities, that is all outdoor recreation spending. And it's very, very low in Taiwan compared to other countries. Now, if the same person in Taipei would go over to Hualien or Taitung and hire a scuba instructor to take them scuba diving, or a sushi jiaolian, or a hiking coach, and they stay in a hotel, or even do a day trip, okay, that's long enough, I'll consider it tourism. But this is domestic tourism. And when we look at tourism markets, it's about 98% of the market is domestic tourism. So when we talk about increasing the available options for tourism and recreation, that entire market is geared towards Taiwanese people. Especially in the pandemic, international tourism markets are essentially useless. There will see huge growth after the pandemic ends, if it ever ends. Who knows how long they'll be, but using sort of like a standard pre-pandemic tourism model, it's also true that increasing domestic tourism options not just brings in money from overseas, but also prevents money from going outside the country and leaving Taiwan, because people don't have to go to Japan or the Philippines to do this activity they want to do. They can do it right here in Taiwan. And people still want to travel. There's other reasons to travel than just it can't be done here. But just simple basic assumption is that if domestic tourism increases, it also reduces Taiwanese tourism abroad because people only have so many vacation days. So let's look into some of these costs and how they compare to other spending. The first is just sort of recreational options. So in Taiwan in general, there's a very limited set of activities that you can participate in. So you can go river tracing in many places, you can go hiking in many places, and you can go biking in many places. You can't go boating anywhere, basically. There's very limited places that you can go boating. You can't go kayaking in many places. There's very limited places that you can go kayaking. If you have your own kayak, you can do it. But because there was active dampening of these economies, so like actually suppression of these economies by government and by culture, it means that the options for you to learn how to kayak and develop kayaking skills are almost non-existent. We sell kayaks. I sell kayaks as a Xiaofei brand pack rafts. Every month we do take people out on free trips. We've done 3 of them so far. They've been very successful. Everybody's had a good time and everybody's developed skills. And the reason we do these free trips is to train people, because I don't want somebody to buy one of my kayaks and then not use it. I don't want it just sitting there in somebody's closet collecting dust. No, if you spend money on like a quality kayak, they're not cheap, then I want you to use it and get the most out of it. Who has friends that kayak in rivers? Nobody. Because it's a very small sport here. I do those trips to, one, to build a community so that people can find friends to do it with, but also to like build skills and confidence so that, eventually people can go themselves without being on these trips. And I'm just not needed for it. And they're not tours. We don't take money for them. That's not the purpose. We want the people who have these pack rafts to be able to use them. So thanks. It's been a very rewarding experience for me. So everybody who got those and joined the trips, thanks a lot. I had a great time and also got to meet new friends. But, moving back, that's just one thing. The same thing goes for rock climbing. The rock climbing community is very small and it has limits. People don't do big rock climbing walls here, even though big rock climbing walls exist. Yeah, illegally, you just can't do it. So nobody does it. Even in the kayaking community, nobody kayaks big water. So if you wanted to learn how to kayak big water, you had to go to Europe, America, India, Africa, the big rivers. Off-roading, the same thing. There's like so many crazy rules regarding that. Essentially, it's not done. I know there's a lot of mixed feelings on how that should be done. But the point is that how it is now is just sort of like ignored and unmanaged. And that goes for most of the sports in Taiwan. Surfing, ignored and unmanaged. Most of the surfers are not locals for where the really good waves are. So there's not that many Aboriginal surfers. And when you look at the surf hostels and the surf instructors and all this income being generated from the surfing industry, well, it's not locals because the locals were forbidden to go into the water, so that it just never developed. It can develop now if the government wants to make an active stance and say, you know what? We are going to invest in rural communities, building skills and building economies that are sustainable systems. Like, maybe instead of just paying fishermen subsidies to go fish in an ocean that's dying, we can train them to be sailing instructors and taking tours, pay them to doing something useful. You can pay fishermen to collect fishing nets instead of throwing fishing nets. Like, there's so much that can be done. And of course, it needs to be increased if we want to actually create and catch up the economies that have been suppressed and abandoned for 30 years. So, it doesn't just happen. Like, it needs to be willed into being. But there's so many of these opportunities, like agritourism. Agritourism is a big thing, and it's sort of like existing in Taiwan, but without that much support in a good, sustainable way when you boost economies of like rural communities, because rural communities already have much lower consumption than urban communities. So if you increase the money in rural communities, do you know what they do with it? They spend it. So I'm a country person, right? I grew up in the countryside. I grew up way out in the middle of nowhere. And for the same reason that I roll my eyes when, you city folk come out to the country and you get amazed when you just see a couple stars or a squirrel or a deer or something like that, you would also be amazed at how excited I get, or used to get before I moved out of the country, for what you consider really probably simple things like movie theaters, libraries, shopping malls, train systems, MRT systems, trade fairs, festivals, like everything. Like, all of that is quite exciting to me, and the tourism all comes back to you. This is the thing about money spent domestically. It's not like, you go and you buy an iPhone and, it costs you 30,000 NT, and 95% of that gets shipped back to Apple and maybe a little bit shipped back to Foxconn or whatever. But the amount of money from that sale that went to the salaries of the people working in the store, it's very limited, right? It's not that much. But if you go out and you hire a river tracing instructor, or you eat at a local restaurant, or you use the services that are provided by like small companies in Taiwan, almost all of the recreation is done by small companies. They're not big global players. There are for equipment, and basically only bicycles, because which I talked about in the other video, like there are no Taiwanese manufacturing really for recreational equipment outside of bicycles. There's boat manufacturing, but it's not for like these small boats that are used around here. And almost everything gets imported, which I think is due to suppressing the local demand. And I think that the evidence for that is that now that the local demand for hiking has spiked in a huge way, you see the domestic production of hiking equipment brands. So I think that if you focus on building up the recreational economy, this is all sorts of outdoor sports and, increasing the options for people, especially children, to be on a baseball team or a basketball team or a diving team or a swimming team. There's more to recreation than just river tracing and hiking. It's actually like a really wide thing. Mountain biking. I had something on my website, 68 Maps, which is a new website for everybody to upload their photos and videos and maps and locations that they like for outdoor sports. I had someone contact me about mountain biking and mountain biking trails, which exists in Taiwan, but it's very, very, very minuscule, infinitesimal way. It's just starting out. The country with the largest share of high-end bicycle production in the world has only domestic road bikes. Almost no demand domestically for mountain bikes. People don't use them. They're not allowed to use them. There isn't places they can go use them. Why is that? Taiwan is a mountainous country with high-class bike manufacturing. Why is it that basically people don't mountain bike? Well, it's because it's mostly prohibited, right? It shouldn't be prohibited. It should be built. Just like you build a hiking trail, you can build a mountain biking trail. That generates the demand. It gives people sports. It gives people recreational. It gives people to do. It generates income. There's a whole slew of services and products and economic activity that comes around opening up a new sport like mountain biking. One is, the obvious one, which is the bikes and the manufacturing, but then it's all the people involved who are building the trails, and then it's the people who are involved in instructing, and the people who are involved in photography and video, and the people who are involved in the hotels and the transportation of those bicycles, and the people who are involved in the clothing, the same manufacturer who makes this clothing. They also make clothing for bicycles. Amazon, the link down at the bottom. Those are made in Taiwan, and they're amazing. And the list goes on and on. When you have a large community, then you also have competitions, and then you can also have international competitions, and then you have, the media involved, and these productions involved, and then all the hotels and services for anybody who comes abroad. So there's a huge potential for any sport if you stoke it and if you build demand for it. And we're not talking about forcing people to mountain bike. If you make mountain bike an option, people will come out who didn't even know that was their passion. They'll just discover it and it'll be their passion. It's providing opportunities, not just work opportunities, but also opportunities for fun and enjoyment in people's lives. And all of the spending in this kind of domestic use and production has really high velocities, right? It's not going to major corporations, which is just being profited by the richest 1% of people. These actually really affect a large amount of people. And when you put money into the hands of ordinary people, they spend it. So that money has a high velocity in the economy and rotates and generates more. These simple investments into recreation have huge returns on people's livelihood and in the economy. I could go on and on about the recreation that's missing in Taiwan. For example, disc golf. Okay, there is disc golf in Taiwan. It sort of exists. There's been one or two competitions here. Does anybody know anybody who disc golfs? Does anybody know where a disc golf course is? Has anybody used it? It's a big sport in the US. I love watching the game. My best friend growing up, Jeremy Colin, he's a professional disc golf player and sport commentator. I always try to come up with a plan. Hey, I should come up with some scheme where we have a big disc golf event here and I can, invite him out, surprise him for a video, because I need to worry about it. He doesn't watch these videos. How would we do that? There's no community here. There's not or at least not one that's big enough to, support that kind of infrastructure. So it's not international tourism. When I talk about this huge missing hole in the economy, I'm not talking about international tourism. I'm talking about domestic spending and domestic activities. These are a huge hole in the economy, but it's also a huge hole in people's hearts, because not everybody can be doing the same. There's so many people who are not suited for river tracing or something like that, which would find huge joy and passion in a sport like disc golf. It's sad to me just to see that the missing opportunities people have and the missing availability for the type of work that you can do and type of recreational activities you can enjoy. So that's what I meant by that video. I hope that I was able to communicate it a bit more clearly this time. Again, any disagreements you have or thoughts that you have or opinions that you have, please comment down below. I read all of the comments and I love to hear what you guys think. Hopefully in the future, we can improve this situation, because it really is sad, especially for children. There's more that they can be doing than going to Bushiban. There's a whole world out there for childhood activities that are not Bushiban or Anshinban. That's that. And if you like this video and you want to see more like it, be sure to click the subscribe button. And if you want to support the creation of more content, you can directly contribute to the show through YouTube Join or Patreon. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.